everybody. Welcome back. We're going deep today, ready to dive in.
Always.
Awesome. This time, we're tackling a big one. It's a chapter from a book. And, we'll ask this question. Who are you? Really?
Oh, yeah, that's a deep one for sure. This chapter, though, it's all about potential and self-worth. But in a way, I've never really thought about it before.
Yeah, it's pretty interesting. The author uses all these artistic analogies and real-world examples, just to drive the points home.
Okay, I'm intrigued.
Okay, well, so he starts off, right? He starts off with this story about a sculptor, finds this rock, seems ordinary, everybody else just walks on by, But the sculptor, he sees something special.
Ah, I see where this is going. Potential.
Exactly. It's not just a rock to him. It's like a masterpiece waiting to happen. Have you ever felt that way about something? Like you saw potential where others didn't?
Oh, all the time.
Yeah.
Especially with people. You just get a feeling sometimes like there's something more there just waiting to be uncovered. It's exciting.
Totally. And the author, he connects this to how we see ourselves. Like we often overlook our own worth, like we're that ordinary rock blending in,
It's so true. We're often our own worst critics. And sometimes we need someone else to point out that diamond in the rough.
And then, bam, the author just hits us with this powerful line. You are not junk.
Whoa. Okay, straight to the point. I like it.
Right. No sugarcoating there. It's like he's saying, hey, your value, it's not determined by what other people think.
Absolutely. And to prove this, the author gets into these really compelling biblical examples, like Jacob, known for being kind of deceitful, right? And Moses, a murderer. But God saw something in them, potential, and used them for amazing things.
Yeah, even with their flaws. It's like God has a totally different perspective.
Right.
He sees beyond those labels we get stuck with.
Exactly. And the author brings up this perfect story to show that. The story of Samuel anointing David as king.
Oh, yeah. David, the underdog, the youngest, least likely candidate. Even his own dad didn't see it.
Exactly. But God saw something special, something everyone else missed.
So God sees potential where we don't. And then the chapter takes this other turn. It brings up the idea of being made in God's image.
Oh, that's where it gets deep. The author connects this to where our potential comes from, our source, God.
It's like a plant gets its potential from the soil, right? We get ours from God.
Yeah, like inheriting qualities and abilities, even if they're hidden, waiting to sprout.
Okay. Now, stay with me on this one. To explain this whole not misjudging something's purpose thing, the author brings up refrigerators.
Refrigerators. Really? Okay, this should be good.
I know, right? It sounds totally random, but he uses this example of how they can be misused, Like sometimes kids get trapped inside and, well...
Oh, wow. Yeah, that's a heavy example.
Yeah, but the point is we shouldn't judge something's purpose just because of how it's misused. And then he connects this back to people.
Makes sense. We shouldn't define ourselves by our mistakes or compare ourselves to others. Like, our potential goes so much deeper than that.
Right. It's about more than just external achievements.
Absolutely. And the author uses another powerful story here, the story of Gideon. He's hiding, scared, feeling anything but mighty.
And then, boom, angel appears, calls him a mighty warrior. Talk about a confidence boost.
Right. What a moment. It highlights this amazing power of naming, God saw Gideon's potential, even when Gideon couldn't see it himself.
Makes you think about those labels we carry, the ones we give ourselves or others give us. How much do those impact how we see our own potential?
A lot. We can get stuck in these limiting beliefs thinking, I'm not good enough, or I could never do that. This chapter really pushes us to break free from those, to consider how God might see us instead.
I love that. So we've got sculptors seeing potential in rocks, God seeing potential in flawed people, even the power of names to shape how we see ourselves. Where do we go from here?
Well, this is where it takes another turn. The author introduces this concept of Christ being in us, not just something we strive for, but like a fundamental part of who we are.
Okay, now this part really got me curious. What does that even mean? Christ in us. Is this like some mystical experience or?
It's deeper than that. The author's saying it's not about trying to get Christ into us, but recognizing he's already there, bringing out that potential, letting that inner Christness shine, I think is how you put it.
Yeah, exactly. But how is he already there? I feel like I need a Christ in you for dummies guide here. Ha ha ha.
Well, the author explains it like this. Christ is the image of God, and we are made in God's image. So Christ's essence, his qualities, his potential, it's already within us, like inheriting a family resemblance, but on a spiritual level.
Okay, I'm starting to see it. So it's not about becoming Christ, but recognizing we already have some of his qualities because we share the same source. We carry a piece of the divine.
Yes, and the author, he gets right to the point. Our task is not to get Christ into us, but out of us, like a call to action. Live in a way that reflects that inner Christ.
Wow. So it's like we've got this incredible gift, this potential, but it's up to us to do something with it. It goes back to how God sees us, not as we are, but as we can be.
Yes, it's like
Yeah.
he sees the finished masterpiece,
Yeah.
even when we're still a work in progress.
And that takes us right into this idea of omnipotent. Now, I know this might sound a little out there, but the author uses this word to describe us.
Yeah, I know it's a strong word, but
Mm.
he's not saying we're all powerful like God. It's more about emphasizing that our potential for growth, for development, it's limitless. It's always unfolding.
So even if we feel stuck, even if we've messed up, that potential's still there. It's just waiting.
Exactly. The only limitations are set by God, not ourselves, not by our circumstances, and certainly not by what other people think.
That's so encouraging. And it takes us back to Gideon, hiding, scared. But the angel sees the mighty warrior inside him.
Yeah, God's vision, for us, it's often way bigger than our own.
And that brings us to this whole idea of the power of naming. God saw Gideon's potential even when Gideon didn't. And by calling him that mighty warrior, it was like he was speaking that potential into being.
But almost like a self-fulfilling prophecy, right?
Huh.
When we believe in ourselves and see our potential, we're more likely to act in ways that line up with that vision. And when other people believe in us, their words, they have a huge impact on how we see ourselves.
Think about all the times we've limited ourselves by believing those negative labels, the ones other people put on us, or even the ones we put on ourselves. It's like we're trapping ourselves in a box and refusing to see what might be outside of it.
Yes, exactly. And this chapter is all about breaking free from those boxes, embracing the truth of who we are in God's eyes. Like with Peter, he was Simon, right? Which means unstable, flaky. But Jesus saw his potential for strength and renamed him Peter, Rock. Even though Peter messed up and doubted, Jesus still called him Rock, affirming that potential for solidity and leadership.
It's crazy how a simple name change can be so powerful. It's like a declaration of potential, like saying, I see who you truly are, even if you can't see it yet. But it makes me think, what about the labels we all carry? The ones that define us, sometimes without us even realizing it.
Yeah, it's good to think about those labels. Which ones are holding us back? Which ones are pushing us forward? And most importantly, which ones actually line up with how God sees us?
These are some deep questions, and I think they're going to take us right into the final part of this deep dive. We're going to explore a concept that takes this conversation to a whole other level. Christ in you.
Now, this is where things get really interesting. We're going way beyond those surface labels. We're diving deep into the very essence of who we are. So you know how we were talking about not misinterpreting the invention?
Yeah, that was a good one.
I think that's really crucial to understanding this whole potential thing. The author uses this analogy of refrigerators and cars. And at first, I was a bit lost.
Oh, same here. I was like, wait, where is this going? But then it all clicked.
Right. He's saying just because we misuse something, it doesn't mean it's not valuable or that it doesn't have a purpose. A refrigerator isn't designed to be dangerous, and a car isn't meant to cause accidents. So why would we define ourselves by our mistakes or our failures?
Or even define others that way. It's so easy to do.
Exactly. And then the author says something even deeper. You will never know yourself by relating to the creation, only to the Creator. Like our true identity, our purpose, it comes from God.
It's not about comparing ourselves to other people.
Exactly. It's about understanding our relationship with God, our source.
Like we talked about before, you came out of God. We're not just random beings, right? We have this connection to something bigger.
And that's where our potential comes from, that connection, that source. The author compares it to how plants get their life from the soil.
Oh.
We get ours from God. Like we inherit His qualities, His abilities, even if we can't see them yet.
Then the author says something really interesting. He actually uses the word omnipotent to describe us. I was a little surprised when I read that.
I know, right? It's a pretty bold statement. But he's not saying we're all powerful in the same way that God is. He's saying our potential is limitless. It's always unfolding. And the only limits, they're set by God.
It's not about our circumstances.
Exactly. Not our circumstances or what other people think. It's much bigger than that.
That's incredibly freeing, don't you think?
Well, absolutely. It means even when we feel stuck, when we make mistakes, there's still this incredible potential inside us. It's like Gideon, remember? Hiding, afraid. But the angel still calls him a mighty warrior.
God saw what Gideon couldn't see in himself.
And that brings up this fascinating point about the power of naming. God saw Gideon's potential. And when he called him a mighty warrior, it was almost like he was speaking that potential into existence.
You know, it's funny. I've heard people say that our names carry a lot of weight, like they can shape our destinies.
I think there's definitely a connection there between our names, our identities, and how we see ourselves. You know, it's like when we believe in ourselves, when we see our own potential, we start acting in ways that support that. And when others see that potential in us and they affirm it with their words, well, that can change everything.
It makes you think about all the times we limit ourselves because of labels. The ones other people give us, or even the ones we put on ourselves. It's like we get stuck in a box and we can't see beyond it.
Yes. And the author wants us to break free from those boxes, to see ourselves the way God sees us. Like the story of Peter. He was Simon, right? Which means unstable, flaky.
Yeah.
But Jesus saw his potential for strength and renamed him Peter, meaning rock. And even though Peter struggled with doubt, Jesus continued to call him rock, affirming that strength, that potential for leadership.
I love how a simple name change can carry so much meaning. It's a declaration, like, I see who you truly are, even if you don't see it yet. What about those labels we all carry around, though? The ones that define us sometimes without us even realizing it.
I think it's powerful to examine those labels. Which ones are holding us back? Which ones are actually pushing us forward? But most importantly, which ones are true? You know, which ones line up with the way God sees us?
These are really important questions to ask ourselves, and they actually lead perfectly into the final part of our deep dive. We're going to explore a concept that takes this conversation to a whole new level: Christ in you.
This is where we get to the really profound stuff. We're moving beyond the surface, beyond the labels, into the core of who we are.
All right, so we're back, and this last part of the chapter really got me thinking, this whole idea of Christ in you. I feel like it's not what you usually hear in a Sunday school lesson.
It definitely goes deeper than that. I mean, the author starts off by quoting this verse from Colossians. To them, God has chosen to make known among the Gentiles the glorious riches of this mystery, which is Christ in you, the hope of glory.
Yeah, when I read that, I have to admit, I was picturing like some kind of mystical being inside me or something.
I think we all have those kinds of images in our minds.
So how do we understand that? What does it actually mean to have Christ in you?
Well, the author really emphasizes this point, that it's not about trying to get Christ into us, but realizing he's already there. It's about bringing out that potential, letting that inner Christness, as we were talking about, shine through.
Okay, so it's not about striving for something that's missing, but like tapping into something that's already present. That makes more sense. But how is Christ already in us? I feel like I need a Christ in you for dummies guide or something.
Yeah, maybe we all do. The author uses this analogy. He says, Christ is the image of God, and we're made in God's image. So Christ's essence, his qualities, and his potential are already within us.
Like inheriting a family resemblance, but on a spiritual level.
Exactly. And he actually says this: our task is not to get Christ into us, but out of us. It's like he's saying we need to live a life that reflects that inner Christ.
That's a pretty powerful statement. It's like we've been given this incredible gift, but now it's our turn to do something with it. And it reminds me of how the author keeps saying that God doesn't see us as we are, but as we can be. Like he sees the finished masterpiece, the fully realized version of Christ in us, even when we're still works in progress.
Oh, I love that. We're all masterpieces in progress. And that Christ in us is like the blueprint. It's what shapes us into who we're meant to be.
So then how does that Christ in us manifest in our lives? Like, how does that actually look?
I don't think he gives us a specific to-do list, but I think it's about cultivating the qualities we see in Christ. Compassion, forgiveness, love, all those things. It's about letting those qualities show in how we treat other people, in our everyday choices, how we face challenges.
So it's not some big mystical experience, but actually about those small acts of kindness.
Exactly. It's recognizing that little spark of the divine in ourselves and letting it shine through.
I have to say, this whole conversation has really got me thinking differently. We started out talking about a sculptor seeing the potential in a simple rock, and now we're talking about the very essence of who we are, the Christ in us.
It's been quite the journey.
It has. So what's the one thing you'd want our listeners to take away from this?
I hope they remember that their identity, their worth, it comes from their relationship with God.
Yeah.
We're not defined by our past mistakes or what's happening right now or even how we see ourselves. We're made in God's image with Christ already in us.
Yeah.
And that's the source of our potential.
Such a powerful reminder. We're not just wandering around aimlessly. We're connected to something so much bigger than us.
And it's a call to really embrace who we are, to see the world through God's eyes, and to live a life that shows the potential He sees in each of us.
Well, we've reached the end of our deep dive. I hope this has given you some new insights and inspired you to see yourself in the world in a different way. Until next time, keep seeking and keep questioning, and of course, keep diving deep.